activating conscious evolution and the tools for that. So I've catered this talk to really concentrate on the elements of sound and frequency that that will provide us some insight and tools to better live a more fruitful, event and joyful and harmonious life. And with I say harmonious because we are now talking about sound and frequency and creating harmony within us. So this presentation here is called the Ultimate Sound and Frequency Webinar. So I do a lot of different presentations of sound, quantum physics of sound, ancient history and sound course, 4-week sound course, but almost actually every single sound presentation I do, if I even quantum physics one, I always start out with this quote. And the reason for this quote really just, I feel drives home the reason why I created this presentation and why I'm so into just understanding and conveying information on frequency. So this quote goes like this. The forms of snowflakes and faces of flowers may take on their shape because they are responding to some sound nature. Likewise, it is possible that crystals, plants, and human beings may be in some way music that has taken on visible form. So that quote pretty much says it all, that vibration, sound, frequency, music, geometry, not only is that a form of vibration and actual sound frequencies, but all things that are created are likely in some way music or vibration that has taken on visible form, including plants, crystals, and even ourselves. And then Nikola Tesla also said it. He said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So a lot of revolutionary minds have known this for quite some time. Before we get into this presentation on sound, I'd like to lay down the universal ground facts. And these are facts that I believe have been quantifiable, have been verified, that we can all collectively agree upon. And this creates a foundation for us to really go deep into the esoterics and how these sound frequencies can actually assist us. So firstly, we are all vibratory energy beings. Well, in my mind, this has been proven at this point that we, even though we look like solid beings, we're actually vibrating frequencies that are vibrating, not only vibrating frequencies, but we're vibrating in and out of reality, in and out of the quantum reality. So we're energy beings and we don't actually see ourselves. We don't actually see each other like what we truly are, which is frequency. We see each other as solid, actual beings. We see the table as a solid table, even though it is on the subatomic level, frequency. Our brains produce electricity. Our brains have an acid in the brain that creates an electrical current. This electrical current goes down our spinal system, through our nervous system, and it fuels all of our organs in our body. So our brains are producing this this electrical current that seems to be the fuel, the energy, the battery even for our bodies to even operate. And which is why they say that we're not dead until we're brain dead, because once you're brain dead, the frequency is no longer being created in your brain. And now the rest of the organs aren't able to operate because it doesn't have its source, its source of energy. Vibration and frequency is measured in hertz. So we're just laying that out there. In this timeline on Earth at this moment, we measure vibration and frequency in hertz, which means how many times per second? 100 hertz will be 100 times per second. The universe is singing. So you might be like, well, how is that a grounded fact? Well, I'll touch on that a little later, but what I'm saying with that is that there's vibration and frequency throughout the universe, and we're now able to even quantify and actually translate those frequencies into sounds. And if you go on YouTube, for example, you type in frequency of Pluto, frequency of the moon, frequency of Saturn, Jupiter, you can actually hear sounds that we have now translated into musical form that show that all these celestial bodies actually have their own distinct vibration. And then this last part here, humans such as us have lived on Earth for thousands of years more than widely been accepted. You know, before it used to be that Homo sapiens had only been around on Earth for 100,000 years. Now it's 300,000 years. And now we're making discoveries so ancient that not only do they show that humanity has been on Earth for quite some time, but it also shows that in some of these ancient civilizations and cultures, we actually had a very high level of consciousness because we're finding structures that date back thousands of years more than when we thought, when we were told that we were actually primitive beings. Now, the reason why I really chose sound, these are just some elements here. There's many reasons why I choose sound to talk about, but for a few of them would be these. All ancient religions and origin stories seem to talk about sound. I have a presentation that I did called Creation Stories of Ancient Civilizations. It's free on our YouTube and also on our website. And in that, I went over 300 different origin stories from around the world. And almost all of them had some sort of, were alluding to some sort of frequency awareness, vibrational awareness in there. And a great example is the origin story of Christianity, Judaism. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, right? Talking about vibration and sound. And I think I have a couple of other ones in here that I'll show you soon. And as I said in the last slide, the universe is full of frequency, vibration everywhere. We only hear and see a limited frequency range. So if it's true that we only hear and see a limited bandwidth of frequency, we now know something that we didn't know maybe a few hundred years ago or a few thousand years ago even, that there are frequencies that are above and below what we can actually perceive. So we now know that there is a mysterious world that is beyond our human perception, right? Which is really amazing because we're now creating instruments and tools to be able to perceive the unseen. And there's countless inaudible frequencies around us. Sound doesn't mean something that you can hear. A dog whistle, for example, it makes a sound, but who hears it? The dog, not ourselves. So there's all these types of frequencies going on all the time. And beyond just audio and sound, think of your Wi-Fi router, think of EMF frequencies, radio signals. There's frequencies around us everywhere. So it would do us well to really investigate what these frequencies are and what effects they have on our bodies and our consciousness. Something that I really got into when I first started doing, Portal to Ascension and conferences, well, the first introduction really into what I'm doing now was creating sound healing events. In 2009, 10, 11, and 12, I was just like, I did hundreds of sound healing events. So as I started doing sound healing events, that's when I got interested in the science of it all, and all this information came about. So what is sound healing? Well, just like adjusting a piano or tuning a guitar, your body can also be tuned. There are ancient instruments and also modern instruments, because we're now creating all types of other sound healing instruments that are utilized to heal and align humanity. Utilizing sound tools will instantaneously alter your body's biochemistry. They can align your chakras, your emotional and spiritual bodies. And some of the benefits that you can receive from, listening to binaural beats, listening to frequencies, creating sound healing events, listening to singing bowls, didgeridoos, which are some instruments that we're going to go over in a little bit from now, are the following. We can reduce stress and increase blood flow. You can fully integrate your body, mind, and spirit, transcend to higher levels of consciousness. And some ancient sites that I'm also going to show in a few slides from now, it seems that they may have actually created certain structures to assist them in elevating and transcending to higher levels of consciousness. There's a possibility that we can heal dis-ease and enhance the immune response. You can create an alkaline environment within your body. Some of these sound tools we've done tests with, and we've realized that they have an alkalizing effect on the body and produce many waves, but one wave that I'm talking about in particular here is theta waves, which takes me to this slide right here, that you can see the different brainwave frequencies that we have. And we can cultivate all types of frequencies utilizing meditation even. You have the gamma wave, which is the genius brainwave. You have the beta wave, which is the linear analytic left brain thinking, right, which is going on right now. You have the alpha wave, which is more relaxed. You close your eyes, you take a few breaths. That's the alpha wave. Then you have the theta wave, which is intuition, flashes of inspiration or high creativity, light sleep. And then we have the delta wave, which is the deep dreamless state, which is a deep relaxation, loss of body awareness. And I think in hypnosis probably goes down to the delta wave. The theta wave is what we actually cultivate when we're going into a meditative state. So normally when you're in meditation and attempting to get to that place of inner peace, the theta wave is really where it's at. as I was understanding and learning sound information, I came across this book here, and I'm going to show you two different books from Jonathan Goldman. And we just had Jonathan on one of our conferences just a month ago. And this book is called Healing Sounds. He's really a pioneer of Western awareness of sound frequency, Western awareness of the ancient use of sound, because in the East, the awareness never really left. But he really resurrected a lot of information and did a lot of experiments and scientific studies. And this is a great book. So if you ever want to like get some foundational information that really takes you to the next level, this is a good one right here, The Power of Harmonics. So I want to speak about chakras. We're going to break down. And as I said, since this presentation is utilizing certain components, we're going to jump around a bit, but you're going to see how it all kind of goes together. So let's talk about chakras. We've all heard of chakras probably. Well, chakras were originally known as Chakras. This H was added later and can be found in the early Vedic text, the Rig Veda, believed to have originated around 1500 to 100 BCE, depending who you ask, because some scholars will tell you that it goes back tens of thousands of years beyond that. And the truth seems to be that the system of the chakra system was known maybe for thousands of years before, but it was actually passed down verbally and communicated, from person to person, from teacher to teacher, rather than put down in a book. And around 1500 to 1000 BCE, we see the first introduction of chakras in actual scripture. The term appears in the Rig Veda, and it actually means, chakra actually just means wheel, disc, or circular. The term chakra can also be found later, see it again in the Upanishads around 100 BCE. Now, the colors of the chakras, believe this or not, the colors of the chakras were not introduced until the 19th century. The ancient scriptures did not have colors. The person who, this is in another presentation, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was, I think, a German, so it was a Western writer, scholar from Germany that put the colors to the chakra system. When I first started getting into understanding who I am as a spiritual being and looking into chakras, because, I was born and raised Hindu and I'm from India, and most Hindu Indians don't even know what the chakra system is. They've heard of it, but they don't really understand it. So when I started getting into spirituality and I came across the chakra system, I quickly found this type of graph right here. And I realized that I used to think that the chakras were metaphoric energy centers, like some quantum portal, right? That energy was flowing in and out of. But then when I found this and I started doing more research, I realized that these are actual physical areas in the body that exist. Now look at this spinal cord right here, and you can see the outpour of nerves at all these areas that go to different organs. Well, those outpour of nerves are actually where the chakras are. So they're actually basically holes in the spine that have an outpour of nerves that connect to the organs. And it just so happens to be that those organs are the organs that we know that correspond to those chakras. So the neural foramen is the opening between every two vertebrae where the nerve roots exit the spine. The nerve roots travel through to reach the rest of your body. So that is the chakra system. Without the foramen, the nerve signals could not travel to and from the brain and to the rest of your body without nerve signals. Your body would not be able to function. So what happens is your brain right here creates this electrical frequency. The frequency travels down your spine, down your nervous system, and then it takes the vibration and the frequency through every single opening in the spine to those organs, giving it the electricity it needs in order to function, right? So that's how the chakra system works on the physical level. All right, now that we made a foundation, of what vibration is, what sound is, how it can benefit us, why we've been doing this presentation, we're going to go back now to ancient history. And it seems that a lot of ancient civilizations had an advanced awareness of sound and vibration that we're only figuring out today. And some of them even created structures to emanate these frequencies that we can't even figure out why or how they even did this. There is sound and resonance in many creation stories. Many creation myths begin with God speaking or singing the universe into being. In conventional science, we have what? We have the Big Bang. Well, a lot of people think of the Big Bang as this huge explosion of this infinite singularity, but what you may not realize is the actual term, the Big Bang, is literally a term to represent sound. What does the Big Bang mean? It means a very large sound, right? So the Big Bang occurred. So even in conventional science, they're even saying that the origin story of conventional science is that it all started with this huge sound. The universe was sung into creation. That's from Egypt. And then in Hinduism, of course, we have Om and each seed sound for each chakra. So each of those chakras actually have its own sound. And some people say that Om vibrates at 432 Hertz, which is A, and each chakra sound correlates to the frequency of that chakra. This creation story right here is from the Laguna, Pueblo Native American creation story. And I love this one so much because not only does it talk about the sound and vibration of creation, but it also ties in sacred geometry and just how the universe was created in the first place. And what you see when you look at a lot of ancient stories is you see that they're talking about some advanced science, but in metaphorical terms. So let's go ahead and say this, and I'll break it down just a little bit. In the center of the universe, she sang. In the midst of the waters, she sang. In the midst of heavens, she sang. In the center, she sang. Her singing made all the worlds of the spirits, the worlds of the people, the worlds of the creatures, the worlds of the gods. In this way, she separated the quarters. Singing, she separated. Upon the face of heaven, she placed her song. Upon the face of water, she placed her song. Thus, she placed her song. Thus, she placed her will. Thus, wove her design. Thus, sang the spider. Thus, she thought. So, if you just take that in right there and just see what is actually being said, we have a lot of references to vibration and sound. In the midst of the waters, well, the waters actually represents space. For example, the reason why the Navy, the U.S. Navy, has jurisdiction in space is because it's considered the second ocean, right? So even now we're using space as with this water metaphor, but from ancient times they've been using the whole concept of water and ocean as being in space. So in the midst of the universe, she sang. In heaven, she sang. Center, she sang. Singing made all the worlds. The vibration made all the worlds. The vibration made the spirits. The vibrations made the people. The vibrations made the creatures. The vibration made the gods. Whoa. The vibrations made the gods? In this way, she separated the quarters. Singing, she separated the different dimensions. Now we're talking about dimensionality here. Upon the face of heaven, she placed her song. Upon the face of water, she placed her song. So that's us right there. And then the end, thus sang the spider. Now, when you see spider references in ancient texts, usually, if not every single time, they're talking about sacred geometry, fractalization. So the whole thing is talking about sound frequency. And then we get to the spider, which we're talking about creating a web. And this web is the fractal nature. Imagine the Big Bang, the infinite singularity, creating this sound, vibrating out, and then the spider web fractalizing out, creating all that we just spoke about right here. Thus she thought, the original intention. So we have also the Australian Aborigines. They speak of the 3 sacred songs, the song past sung by the primordial ancestor spirits who walked across their landscape, singing its landforms into being. And then we have the 6 days of creation, which connect with the 6 aspects of Om, the 6 solfeggio tones, the 6 aspects of the all-seeing eye of Horus. And this quote right here might be familiar to you. You probably never heard this exact quote, but you can probably connect to what it sounds like. In the beginning was Brahman, with whom was the word, and the word is Brahman. Krishna Ayurveda. Well, what does that connect with? Well, of course, in the beginning was the word, and the word was God. So let's break that down a little bit. The Bible, John 1:1. This one is I would say one of the most common origin stories in the world, next to the Big Bang, just because Christianity really, for the last 2,000 years has been kind of the main religion on the planet. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. Well, we have a paradox here. not only was the word there before everything, which is the vibration, but the word was with God. So the word was actually with God, two separate entities together, but the word was actually also God. He, now this is where a lot of people in conventional Christianity start thinking we're talking about Jesus or just God in general. But if we connect it back to what we're talking about here, who is he? Well, he is the word. He is sound. He is the word. The sound was with God in the beginning. Through him, who's him, sound, through sound, all things were made. Without sound, nothing was made that has been made. In sound was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So now we're talking about the dimension creation. And in ancient Egypt, one of the, I would say, the most awareness that is coming out, and so many researchers really touch on when it comes to ancient Egypt and the utilization of sound. So firstly, I'm going to show this clip here from Robert Schoch, and this is from our conference that we did in Irvine, the Portal to Ascension conference back in 2018. And he's going to go over just some elements here of the Great Sphinx, because in order to understand the utilization of sound, we also need to redate our history, redate what we know to be our conventional timeline. So let me just stop my share so I can make sure I share the sound here.
Study the Sphinx, my young me, and what we found is that we had uneven weathering around the Sphinx. What this suggests, doesn't just suggest, I mean, it's very evident to me, the Sphinx was actually carved out initially on 3 sides. Then it was later fully carved in the back. This level of weathering, which is much more shallow in the back, is compatible with and compares well with the subsurface mineralogical changes, so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about subsurface weathering, that we have for other Old Kingdom, dynastic, 4th dynasty tombs and structures that are supposedly contemporaneous with the original Sphinx. Does everyone follow? The fact that you have much, much deeper weathering around the other 3 sides indicates that this was carved out earlier. The body was carved out earlier. And actually what happens when you look there is that initially, you see how you have the older weathering here? The Sphinx was only carved down to this point approximately initially, so it emerged out of the bedrock, and then I believe in the 4th dynasty, about 2500 BC, they were not carving the Sphinx originally, they were recarving parts of it, including the head, sometime in dynastic times, along the back, etc. So initially, the Sphinx actually emerged from the bedrock, which is interesting because in the age of Leo, about 10,000 BC, when the Sphinx sits due east, at that time in the age of Leo, what rose on the horizon due east on the vernal equinox? The constellation Leo. And when you view it from this vantage point, arguably it rises that way with the rump. Do you see how the rump sort of attaches to the horizon initially as it comes up? Now, I am not basing my data.
Sites are dated to just who was there last, right? Something that isn't told to us a lot by mainstream science is that they can't carbon date rock. You know, you can't carbon date the Sphinx unless it's organic matter that was actually utilized to create it. If it was created from wood, if it was an ancient structure created from wood, then you can carbon date it, but you can't carbon date the stone like that. So a lot of times we're just told, you know, the last thing that occurred. So we go back to 2500 BC for the Sphinx. However, archaeological evidence, geological studies, and more are now showing that it's probably at least 13,500 years old, which goes to 10,000 BC. Now, there's also, so that's just one component, just to kind of date back that Egypt is probably much older and has gone through shifts in the cycles of consciousness in which humanity was at a higher consciousness. that they probably had some awareness of vibration and sound that we're only now figuring out. There's also a documentary on Netflix called The Pyramid Code. It's a great documentary. And in this one, Robert Schoch and many other people, Robert Paval, are in there, and they break down a lot of information on frequencies of ancient sites in Egypt. And underneath, what's been found is underneath the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, there are aqueducts. So if you can follow my cursor here, right here at the bottom where we see this tube going down, there's actually aqueducts underneath here, right? And what would happen is if you go back 13,500 years ago and you look at how the tides were in Egypt from the Nile River would overflow every now and then, maybe depending on the season, and then the water would actually go underneath the aqueducts. So it would go underneath the pyramids into the aqueducts, and they have found copper rods connecting into the aqueducts below the pyramids that would then, what would happen? Basically, the water would go underneath the aqueducts. They would create an electrical current. The electrical current would be picked up by the copper rods, and then the copper rods would take the energy from the electrical current and go into the pyramid, into chambers. So now we speculate what could have that been before. And people are saying that the pyramids were probably some sort of energy generating device, taking the natural frequency of Earth, utilizing these aqueducts and copper rods that could have, one, been utilized for healing, two, been utilized for maybe connecting to higher states of consciousness, or three, some sort of energy device utilized for something that we really don't know what. So there are many possibilities of what it could have been used for. So sound was utilized to create megalithic structures, it seems. And there are origin stories around the world, creation stories, and other scriptural stories that talk about how their structures were created that say something about vibration and sound. For example, the H blocks in Puma Punku, the stories, the local stories there and the legend are that they were actually levitated into place. So there's a papyrus that dates around 2600 BCE that said the Giza was created in 20 years, right? The pyramids contain 2.3 million individual blocks of stone, meaning one block would have to be laid every 5 minutes of every hour, 24 hours a day for 20 years. But the problem with that is each block weighs at least 2 tons, and that's like 1,764,000 pounds of stone being laid every day for 20 years. It's not humanly possible. Well, it is humanly possible if we had an advanced awareness of sound. So could it be a levitation? Egyptian language also, it was created in a way to emphasize specific frequencies. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Sound frequencies generated by the aqueducts, just like I said, could have been what actually fueled and gave power to these devices. Experiments conducted by Tom Danley in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid and in chambers above the King's Chamber suggest that the pyramid was constructed with a sonic purpose. Danley identifies 4 resonant frequencies or notes that are enhanced by the structure of the pyramid and by the materials used in its construction. The notes start from an F-sharp chord, which according to ancient Egyptian texts was the harmonic replica of Earth's. Now here's another video of Brian Forster, who we've done many presentations with, and this is him on the Red Pyramid, and they are experimenting inside with sound frequency, and you can see kind of what kind of effect that just chanting inside the pyramids have.
This is the entrance to the Red Pyramid. We're going down the shaft, and we're going to go into these incredible rooms, which are acoustic chambers. Forget about the idea of tombs, think sound and vibrational technology. So this is actually inside, about 20 feet, more than 100 feet to go. Okay, now we're maybe a third of the way in. And Yusuf Awiyan, the dark figure, is about to come past me. Okay, maybe halfway down now, and the heat is already starting to pick up in here, as well as the heat generated by anticipation and awe. Okay, so we're at the bottom of the descending passageway. It's got to be 90 degrees Fahrenheit in here right now. And now we're going sideways. and it is tuned to A. That seems to be the sound that it likes the best. So I've just walked through a short tunnel into the second of the chambers here, and the sides of them taper in with these almost baffle-like stones, and of course that is, it could be actually an acoustic cone filter of some kind. The lighting's pretty terrible, but you can see there is a massive crack in the solid stone, and that's part of the theory, again, that this was an energy generating device, as were some of the others of the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, and that they actually became overloaded at one point, partially exploded, and then shut down. And as hard as it may be imagined to believe, we could be talking about that explosion occurring about 12,000 years ago at the...
He was actually about to say at the end of the last ice age. So what do we see right there? They weren't chanting A or intentionally chanting A. All types of people have done experiments there. It seems that whatever vibration you make in that area, the structure is created in a way that it emanates the A note back to you, which then connects to the pineal gland, which is the third eye note that we spoke about earlier in the chakras. So now we broke down a few different ways that this could have been working. Energy generating devices, maybe for self-healing, maybe higher consciousness activations, maybe assisting people in decalcifying, opening their third eyes. Well, we do know that the frequency A is being emanated there, no matter how or what you're chanting, which takes us to this right here, which shows that not only did the Egyptians have a really advanced awareness on creating sound and vibration and the acoustics of these structures, but they actually embedded it in their art. And what we see here is, of course, the all-seeing eye of Horus, right? This right down here and this right up here, which is actually, if you did a cross intersection of the human brain, which is actually the exact layout and style of the way our pineal gland and pituitary gland is connected. Looks, if you were able to do an intersection of the brain and take a look at it, you can see right here is actually the same shape as the all-seeing eye of Horus, which represents the third eye. And then that connects to the fact that the A frequency is also within there, maybe assisting people to connect to these celestial beings. And the all-seeing eye of Horus is they were just such geniuses, and a lot of ancient civilizations were like so amazing and genius beyond anything that I can even fathom, that not only do we see the A note connection, the third eye connection, the all-seeing eye of Horus, which is the intersection of the brain, but the way they created the all-seeing eye of Horus was all actually based on musical intervals as well. So it's just there was so much symbolism in just this one piece of art. In ancient Egypt, they did not use vowels in ancient Egypt, in pre-dynastic Egypt and beyond. So let's just say, because Brian Forster also said at least 12,000 years old. So we're getting similar dating now, 13,500 years ago, 12,000 years. We're going back way further than 2500 BCE, which was the beginning of dynastic Egypt. We have pre-dynastic Egypt before that, but we're thinking 10,000 years even before that occurred, right? So in ancient Egypt, before dynastic Egypt, they did not utilize vowels. Ancient Egyptians thought that they were too sacred, so they left them out. The vowels got introduced within Eastern culture variations of chants for healing and spiritual ascension. So the chanting, the vowel creation, all was introduced at a later point, which was after there seemed to be some sort of explosion that occurred in these pyramids that we actually can see evidence of now. So could it be that we're going through a cycle of time, we're going through a devolution of consciousness, and then these structures could no longer sustain themselves? Whatever happened, including that red pyramid that obviously had some sort of explosion occurring at that point. And then at that point, vowels started getting introduced into humanity. And when we track back the timeline of humanity, that's what we actually witness. We do witness when vowels were introduced. And they weren't utilized in regular day-to-day conversation at first. They were utilized just to create frequencies and experiences within the body and connect to the divine. Vowels, and as I say here again, vowels were not introduced into spoken language until many years after we began writing and documenting our experiences on Earth. This time around, because I believe we've been going through cycles. All right, so this takes us into vowel chanting. We laid down, we're going to get back to some ancient history because I wanted to talk to you about County Meath, Ireland, and we're going to talk about that one in just a moment here. But now that we've spoke about ancient Egypt, we're going to get into vowel chanting and the utilization of it from the ancient past up until the present and how it can actually benefit us, because the reason why we're all here today is really looking for the tools and techniques. I love chanting because chanting has given me the most tangible experience of consciousness, tangible experience of inner peace, tangible experience of meditation. When you chant and you harmonize your own body and you feel your own vibrations, it's on a completely different level. Plus, it also gives your mind something to concentrate on. So you're not just in quiet, attempting to breathe and concentrate on your breath. You give yourself something to focus on, and then that allows it to kind of push everything else aside, right? All the other thoughts, and then start creating your intention. So the history of vowel chanting. In India, many have verbalized the sound of the universe as Om. And in Tibet, Buddhist monks created an otherworldly form of chant. Their attempt was to reproduce audibly something of the inner sounds that they heard during meditation. So the chanting that we hear from Tibet and beyond Tibet, because it came out of India with Siddhartha Gautama, that when we see what their original intent was from chanting, was they were attempting to create audibly something that they were to hear when they were meditating in deep meditation. There was some sort of vibration and frequency. And that's what we see with a lot of sound tools, didgeridoo, singing bowls, that a lot of these sound tools were attempts to create what we were hearing in meditation or what we were able to create with our own voices. We have the various Christian and Hermetic and other Gnostic schools of Egypt. They also devised forms of chant that they perceived as verbally mimicking and expressing the real name of God. So in deep meditation, they would hear this vibration and they thought that that sound was the vibration of God. So that is otherwise hidden in the silence of the soul. Even in Scythian Jewish Gnostic texts called the Gospel of the Egyptians is an example of a vowel chant of Gnosticism, a kind of Western equivalent to the Om. Gnostics chanted various combinations of vowels and have included them in their prayers. And you can see one right here. Obviously, this is in English and they had a different language, but it's something like this. I praise you, I call your name that is hidden within me. And then the vowels, I-E-O-E-A-O, I-E-O-E-A-O, right? If you look at the original name of Yahweh, that's just a bunch of vowels, right? So that sound was vowels that we utilize every day when we say words. Were all connected to the frequencies that we could originally utilize in order to get into deep meditation. We also see these in the Nag Hammadi text. So the long vowel chant in the Gospel of the Egyptians spells I-E-O-U, a sacred name of God, according to some. And just to show you how the Egyptians did not use vowels, the original name of Egypt was a name given to the Egyptians by the Greeks when the Greeks conquered them. Before that, it was Kemet. And Kemet was spelled K-M-T because the E's were not allowed to be put in yet until dynastic Egypt. Even the Ankh, right? We've heard of the Ankh, and I'll show you what the Ankh is in a second if you don't know what that is. Even that was not Ankh. That was Nkh, N-K-H. Vowels were introduced into communication thousands of years later. So why was that, right? And I think we just broke that down. So what I usually do in the course here is I spend time chanting these vowels. But since there's a lot of information here I want to provide you, I'm just going to give you this insight that you can do yourself rather than us chanting these vowels, because that would probably take like a good 10 minutes. So try this. And this is, I like to be so have little dogma in everything that I do, because I feel that connects us to a universal consciousness and allows more people to understand what we're saying. So when you say chant, when you tell someone, maybe a Christian, for example, that are having issues and want to learn how to meditate, oh, why don't you chant the chakra seed sounds? Might not be the thing for them because it goes against the fundamental beliefs. And it's not about rocking people's beliefs and changing their beliefs for them. It's about giving them the tools they need to create peace for themselves. Just like the Rig Veda, one of the ancient texts of India that was the foundational text that became Hinduism. It says there are many pathways to the same destination. There are many pathways to the same destination. What does that mean? Well, that means you can be Christian, Buddhist, you can have no religion. It doesn't matter. We're all going to the same place. You know, we all have the ability to go wherever we need to go. So you don't need to convert. That's why Hinduism has no formal conversion. You cannot formally convert to Hinduism. You can call yourself a Hindu and you are one. That's it. You can call yourself anything and you are that. So I like to go with the vowels because that's something that we all use all over the world. And the way you do this is, and you're going to watch the replay on this. Maybe you can pause it when you watch this replay and do this. So try the vowels in English, A, E, I, O, U. Chant each of them 3 times. And I'm just going to go through it one time just to kind of give you an example of how it goes. So A. E. I. O. O. U. So go ahead and pause the video here when you watch this later, or if you're watching this now, and try that yourself and do it 3 times. I actually did them very short because I wanted to, because of timing, but take a full breath and express it fully and just see how that feels in your body. And what I do when I teach people sound instruments, sound healing, is we actually spend a whole entire day just chanting vowels and chanting seed sounds, because the best way to be a great sound practitioner is to best way to utilize external sound tools to help heal is to first feel the sound within yourself. And these vowels actually connect to the energy centers of the body. And you can see here in this graph where each of these sounds that are connected to the vowels actually connect to your chakras as well. And you can even feel it. See where you feel it. When I normally tell people is chant 1 vowel, sit with yourself, write down or make a mental note in your head, where did I feel that energy? When we do this, 90% of everybody feel it in the same area, because that is what that sound is for. The other 10% feel it elsewhere. Why? Because it goes where it needs to go, right? It's a frequency. It's like somebody told me once, these frequencies are all doctors, but they all have specialities. They can all diagnose you on certain things all throughout, but then certain frequencies will go and penetrate certain areas even more than others. And if you want to take a look at these chakra sounds, on the left here, we have the sound per chakra. So you can also chant these. A great way to start your day. If you're in a funk, you maybe have some anxiety, right? Definitely if you have anxiety, because this is what I use it for, is for anxiety, is to chant these sounds 3 times each. But if you want to take it to a whole other level and spend 15 minutes, chant all these chakra sounds on the left 3 times, and then chant all the vowels 3 times, and then see how you feel. We have here, just to further that a bit, the chakra sounds and their corresponding vowel sounds. Beyond, so we're breaking it down now. We went from ancient history, we went from the foundation of sound, what is sound frequency, to the ancient use of sound and vibration, to vowels and how the vowels have been utilized throughout history and how you can use it at home in order to benefit your own life. But now let's take away that entirely too. What was there before verbal? Well, before we were communicating, what were we able to do before we were able to communicate through words? Well, we were able to humming. There is something called the humming effect. And the humming effect basically drills home the fact that you and I were our own biggest tool. We're our own biggest tuning fork. You know, we're our own vibrational instrument. Sound instruments, as I said earlier, were designed to mimic the human voice. So we all have the power we need to harmonize ourselves and tap into our innate gifts and abilities. You don't even need to say those sounds. Your humming can actually have that similar effect. And with humming, you can move the sound throughout your body when you do it intentionally. It is now known by conventional science that we have 3 brains, right? That are all have as many synaptic connectors as the other ones, that are seem to have minds of their own, right? We have our mind, which is up here, our brain, and the universal mind that we most likely connect to as well. We have our gut, which has its own intelligence. We have our heart, which is also its own brain. Each one of these can be activated through sound, and we can move the energy wherever we want. So let's all hum together and try this, shall we? And this book here, The Humming Effect, is the other book by Jonathan Goldman. If that first book was great, this book takes it to a whole other level that is so entirely appreciated, that it breaks down the science of humming. And I'm going to show you some of the science right now, but you read this book and you start doing the tools and techniques here, and you realize how the hum can have more of an effect, positive effect on your body than even chanting chakra sounds, even chanting vowels, or even going to a sound healing event. So this is the way humming goes. And let's just do a quick hum together, okay? So I'm just going to show you just one hum here. And then we'll take another breath in after I'm done with my hum. And then whoever wants to, we can all hum together, okay? So it's just like this. You just take a deep breath in. Hopefully you can hear it through this microphone, then hum. So let's try that again, okay? So everybody, just get relaxed. In a second, we're going to take a deep breath in. Now take a deep inhale and exhale with a hum. You can even mess around with the hum or play around with it and change the sounds of it and move it around like this. Hopefully you heard that. I felt it in the chest. I felt it in my throat, of course, right? Going down here. I felt it in my head too, that the frequency will go wherever it needs to go. However, it was definitely, when you hum at first, you're going to feel it here and over here. So I invite you, next time you try this, to actually try to move the frequency yourself, okay? Try to see where you can actually shift the frequency to. Now let's talk about the science of this. Research has shown humming to be much more than a self-soothing sound. It affects us on a physical level, because it's proven that we use humming to soothe ourselves. You know, even somebody like I imagine a movie of somebody in the corner of a psych ward humming to themselves to soothe themselves, you know? So it's like you can hum to soothe yourself, but it's more than that. It affects us on a physical level, reduce stress, inducing calmness. This is all verifiable science right here. And I'll show you some of the science in a sec. I believe I have in this presentation. Inducing calmness, enhancing sleep, as well as lowering your heart rate and blood pressure, and producing a powerful neurochemical such as oxytocin, which is known as the love hormone, right? You did feel it in your heart, right? Helps expand and open those energy centers. The energy centers that actually physiologically exist are real places. Conscious humming, intentional humming, helps reduce stress and blood pressure to increase lymphatic circulation and melatonin production, right? Having sleep problems, hum. Having lymphatic circulation and drainage issues, hum. Even your lymph nodes we talked about coffee yesterday, your lymph nodes get affected by coffee, right? Humming helps drain that. Researchers found that humming releases endorphins and nitric oxide and creates new neural pathways in the brain. Hence, they conclude that humming can be used to stream neurological diseases, including Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. A new study came out about 2 years ago that patients with Alzheimer's and dementia would forget almost everything, including the family members, but they would remember full songs. And the people that didn't remember the full songs remembered how to hum that song. Can't remember anything else, but you remember the frequency. So rewiring the brain. The synaptic connectors get rewired or decalcified, and then we have the opportunity to create new neural pathways. Same thing happens with plant medicine. Ayahuasca, for example, it breaks, over years and years, we create all these neural pathways and synaptic connectors in our brain. These synaptic connectors calcify, calcify, calcify. The more we do the same things over and over, the more we create these synaptic connectors that become so rigid that it's very difficult to break our patterns. Whether you're a criminal, whether you're abusive to somebody, whether you have this negative self-talk, these are synaptic connectors you created over so much time that it's become so challenging to break it. And you ask, why can't I change this? Why can't I change this? Well, you've lived life, a really long life of completely validating this so much that these synaptic connectors are so rigid and they really can't get restructured. Well, the science shows plant medicine for sure, because I always got to throw in plant medicine, but definitely humming helps actually break down your synaptic connectors. And then, and this is from EEG studies on people, that now you have the ability to rewire in whichever way better serves you. So I spoke about nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is so important that the body has evolved 2 separate pathways to generate a steady supply of it. One depends on an adequate supply of the amino acid L-arginine. The second makes use of dietary nitrates, compounds found in a variety of whole plant foods. So we have a natural forming way, there's amino acid, and then we have whole plant foods that help us create nitric oxide. Spinach, raw beets, and others. People who fail to consume adequate amounts of healthy foods, such as beets, spinach, arugula, cabbage, may suffer from a deficiency in nitrates, essentially robbing themselves of the raw materials the body needs to create nitric oxide and regulate blood pressure. People that have blood pressure issues, most likely probably have low nitric oxide, and that's what the studies actually show as well. And what are the 3 ailments that have the lowest nitric oxide production, that are so low that it could actually be affecting the reason why they have these ailments in the first place? Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. So what happens when these people that have any of those 3 start humming? Well, first of all, even if they forgot other things, they can still hum. And all of a sudden, there's an increased nitric oxide supply in the body. What happens is the vibration of your nasal cavity right here is, you can see where I'm pointing, right under your nose or above my mustache. That's the vibrating area that actually is responsible for creating nitric oxide. In addition to promoting blood vessels to relax, expand, and promote greater blood flow, nitric oxide also affects the behavior of blood components called platelets. It makes them less sticky. This makes them less likely to clump together and form a blood clot. Nitric oxide production tends to drop off as aging progresses. That's why it may be especially important in older people. Humming results in a large increase in NO caused by a rapid gas exchange in the paranasal sinuses, the area that I just showed you. That is where it comes from. So hum. Now, here is one of the scientific studies on here. And because I want to get into more detail, more information, I'm just going to briefly read the first part. NO levels increase greatly during humming compared to silent. This is the research study paper. Greatly during humming compared to silent exhalation. In this study, the physiological and anatomical factors that regulate NO release during humming have been characterized in 10 healthy subjects in a model of the sinus and the nose. So long story short, they tried this out with many people, NO increased in all of them. So let's just absorb that for a second, because we're talking about the chakras, we're talking about the vowel sounds, and then we broke it down. So we went from even though it's not really dogmatic, it's universal. We went through religious texts that have this information on chakras. We took that down to just basic words that we can all use around the world, vowels. Then we took that down to let's not even speak at all, and let's just get to our voice and what happens. Let's get back to ancient historical awareness of frequency, because that was a detour. Why did we even do all of that right there? Well, the reason why we did all that is because we're talking about Egypt and how Egypt actually was in ancient Egypt or Kemet, they were not actually utilizing vowels. So that took us down a rabbit hole of really figuring out why weren't they doing that? And all of the backstory of the vowels, the humming and all of that, that is the reason why. Now back to ancient history. There's a place, County Meath, Ireland. There's a 5,000-year-old structure found to be amplifying the Earth's natural magnetic frequency in that area. And this structure is emanating 110 Hertz. It was built around 3200 BC in the Neolithic period. A part of an age where we're conventionally told that they cannot create structures that have these frequencies that they intentionally design. The last part of the Stone Age but it's older than that. And here's what it looks like. So on February 17, 2012, Vancouver Archaeoacoustics Convention, in which archaeologists, anthropologists, and scientists, they get together. So this is a mainstream archaeoacoustics convention. They get together to discuss sound and resonance properties of ancient sites. Well, maybe I didn't know until I found this out. How interesting is that these mainstream scientists get together to speak about sound and resonance in ancient sites? Well, they went to Malta and they tested the frequency and discovered that these caves resonate with 110 Hertz. So they did EEG tests and they wanted to see what part of the brain responds to 110 Hertz. They discovered that it stimulates the area responsible for visuals and creativity, kind of like a psychedelic experience. Some participants who were a part of the study claimed to have out-of-body experiences. These aren't New Agers, these aren't spiritualists, maybe they're into spirituality, but these are just regular scientists that went there and they're like, whoa, I'm getting an OBE just by being here. And in Ancient Aliens, there's a whole episode on this frequency actually, and they call it the alien frequency. Researchers detected the presence of a strong double resonant frequency, a lot of double octave, double harmonics that we see at 70 Hertz and 114 Hertz. So archaeologist Fernando Cobra said that he felt the sound crossing his body at high speed, leaving a sensation of relaxation. When it was repeated, the sensation returned, and he also had the illusion that the sound was reflected from his body to the ancient red ochre paintings on the walls. One can only imagine the experience in antiquity. In the publication from the conference, Dr. Pablo de Brotelis reports on tests conducted at the University of Trieste in Italy. Each volunteer has their own individual frequency of activation, always been 90 and 120 Hertz. Those volunteers with a frontal lobe prevalence during testing received ideas and thoughts similar to what happens during meditation, whilst those with low occipital lobe prevalence visualized images. He goes on to state that under the right circumstances, ancient populations were able to obtain different states of consciousness without the use of drugs or other chemical substances. Obviously, this slide right here, I could do a whole 1 hour presentation on breaking down every single word and what it means for spirituality. Because first of all, each person activated their consciousness at different frequencies. They were getting plant medicine-like experiences, out-of-body experiences. The first guy, archaeologist, saw himself projected on the wall, right? And then depending on some EEG studies, depending on the frontal lobe or the occipital lobe, right? They were having different experiences. Some were getting relaxation, kind of like meditative experiences, and others were getting psychedelic experiences, just like what happens in plant medicine. Some people get those type of experiences that are just inner reflective experiences. Some actually get more visuals. So what were they doing in this structure and why did they create it? In my book, immense amounts of evidence from ancient scriptures and scientific evaluation of ancient sites and proof of advanced sound technology. So it is harder to disprove the ancients had an advanced awareness of vibration than it is to prove it. So if somebody says, no, that's not true, well, I say, disprove it to me, because there's so much evidence out there to show that they had some incredible awareness. So the Greek Pythagoras, 500 BC, he was the father of music therapy. Pythagoras' mystery school on the island of Crotona taught the use of flute and lyre as the primary healing instruments. With his monochord, Pythagoras was able to unravel the mystery of musical intervals. The Western music scale was created. It is now documented, known, spoke about by channelers, researchers, historians, that Pythagoras went to Egypt for a period of 10 years. And when he was there, he was initiated to many different mystery schools that even regular Egyptians weren't even allowed to go into. The Egyptians were really open to foreigners. Even when Alexander the Great went to Egypt, which I'm doing another presentation on Alexander the Great, such great information there. But even when he went there, they opened him up as the savior of Egypt, that he was the prophet foretold to come back. They didn't have that, like, you are not Egyptian kind of mentality. So they invited him in. He got implemented in all these mystery schools and started getting all this awareness that was ancient awareness that a lot of people, including myself, believe came from Atlantis or even beyond that. He was provided with ancient advanced awareness from celestial beings as well. So how I showed the Egyptian structures, some people speculate that he went into these structures and he was, bombarded with these frequencies where he was in a meditative state, just like in County Meath, Ireland, and was able to communicate with these beings, as well as getting information that was left on Earth from ancient civilizations. He successfully connected geometry and mathematics to music, thereby founding the entire Western music scale. Well, this guy was extremely into consciousness, spirituality, and sound. So it's very interesting that Pythagoras, the father of geometry, I took a geometry class, a lot of this information came from him. It's a mainstream study, right? The way structures are, the way bridges are created, the way we utilize geometry, the information that the Masons took, the stone Masons, and that gave them free reign over the whole of Europe in a time where you couldn't travel because of the Crusades like that, because they had these equations left by Pythagoras on how they create structures. This guy, he went to Egypt and got all this awareness. It's very interesting to me to realize that a lot of these amazing people actually that we know as conventionally, right, really had a foundation in spiritual sciences. So Pythagoras considered that music contributed greatly to health. He called his method musical medicine. To the accompaniment of Pythagoras, his followers would sing in unison and in certain chants. Here we go again, chanting. At other times, his disciples employed music as medicine with certain melodies composed to cure the passions of the psyche, anger and aggression, also known as the founder of geometry. So they would do chants, and there were sound healers. They were utilizing tools in order to cure the passions of the psyche. So what that really means is all the disharmonic frequencies and emotions that we create, how can we create peace in those areas? Okay, I'm going to leave this slide here for you to read later, okay, because it's a big one. But this one right here not only connects Pythagoras, but it tells you the science behind what happens when the sound frequency penetrates your body and how it penetrates your cell and leaves a message. The frequency that you're getting from a sound bowl goes into your body. There's a message within that sound body. It vibrates the cell. The cell opens up. This vibration goes inside. It drops the message. And now something happens. And this quote right here by this PhD, Candace Pert, explains that on a really great level. So many sound healing tools today only exist due to Pythagoras' discovery of specific notes and how they can affect the human body. He didn't really discover, he rediscovered, or he brought back ancient wisdom. And so like, for example, tuning forks, we would not have tuning forks. We would not have the chakra tuning fork scale. The scale of the tuning forks, the A equals this and all that was all rediscovered and resurrected from this guy. Did he get this information from ancient Egypt? All right, now let's do some, I'm just gonna talk to you about just some sound tools here, just like the ancient history of it and how you can use it. And the original tuning fork in my book and many others was actually the ankh. The ankh was utilized as a sound healing instrument. So what is a tuning fork? Well, a tuning fork is an acoustic resonator in the form of a two-pronged fork where the prongs formed for a U shape of bar of metal. It emits a pure musical tone after waiting a moment to allow some high overtones to die out. The main reason for using the fork shape is that, unlike many other types of resonators, it produces a very pure tone with most of the vibrational energy at the fundamental frequency and little overtones. The didgeridoo, my favorite instrument. The didgeridoo originates from Arnhem Land, Northern Australia. It may be the world's oldest musical instrument, documented at least. It might be around 40,000 years old. Scholars and historians say that that could be the case. Traditionally, didgeridoos are made out of eucalyptus tree trunks and limbs hollowed out. And basically, they would cut out the mouthpiece in order to be able to blow through it and create the sounds that they do. And here are naturally created didgeridoos that were the way they originally are. Obviously, we exist in an advanced age now. We're able to create it out of all types of things, right? Even crystals. But you can see here, what actually occurs is that there are termites in the outback, right? In the wilderness of Australia. The termites would go into these eucalyptus tubes and they would carve out the entire thing. So the original didgeridoos were actually created, and even today, by termites for thousands of years, going in it and making the circular shape and going through like that. But what is really interesting, until modern time, when we've been able to make didgeridoos have different frequencies, every original didgeridoo, every termite-made didgeridoo, when blown through, all create the exact same note frequency, C sharp, C sharp. So imagine tens of thousands of eucalyptus tubes over 40,000 years, or hundreds of thousands, carved out by termites, and you can pick up 20 of them, blow through them, get a guitar tuner, put it at the end of it, see what sound it comes out with, and it's all C sharp, right? So there was something in the DNA code where they were creating that. Today, didgeridoos are made from a large variety of materials. Didgeridoo was traditionally used as an accompaniment along with chants, singers, and dancers in ceremonies. Oftentimes, only men played it, but because actually it's the phallic symbol, the didgeridoo represents the male penis. So the women were not allowed to use it because it was a rite of passage that when a child would get to a certain age, they had to take a psychedelic, go into the wilderness, and they were not allowed to come back until they found the didgeridoo. What does that represent? It's a rite of passage for the men. And the word didgeridoo, just to let you know, is a Western word that was given to the instrument 100 years ago when the English went in there and go, that sounds like didgeridoo. And I think I'll leave it at that, but I'll go all the way to my last slide right here, just so that we can have some closure to everything we just went through. What does this mean? How about that, huh? So the ancient history component that I've been showing here really does go to the fact that we've been advanced civilizations at least once, right? But I feel many, many times, and this connects to what we know as the Yuga Cycles and the age of consciousness, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Golden Age, the Satya Yuga, the Kali Yuga, all terms that you may have heard of before. And it seems that in ancient past, that this advanced awareness not only made it that they did not need certain tones and frequencies or vowels even, but they did not need the tools that maybe we're utilizing now, that they had some sort of advanced consciousness awareness. The Greek poet Hesiod, between 750 and 650 BC, in his poem Work and Days, spoke about these different ages. And here's a graph of the ages. And you can see the golden age, thank God, is actually the longest age, lasts the longest. And each corresponding lower age is lower and lower. We right now are at this age. You see this right here, the Kali Yuga, between the bottom here and this, we're actually in the Bronze Age. We've left the Kali Yuga 200 years ago. We've been in the transition phase for around 200 years, since 1700 BC, since 1700 CE. And here's a graph. I'll leave this here for 20 seconds so you can pause this and take a look at this on your own time and look at the age in the future where we're going to be and in the past. And that's about it. That all connects to our true world history and where we're going now. So the words I want to leave you with, guys, is that utilize these sound tools, and also that we're coming to a state of consciousness right now where a lot of this awareness is coming back, because we're on an upturn in consciousness. So not only does the sound and vibration of us and the entire planet and collective consciousness have to do with these cycles that we're going through, but you can now use it in your own, home. And we're actually getting to a point where we're starting to realize how to create technology that emanates these frequencies to give us these experiences. So these are things that we can